Like, why lie? It was just...
I'll tell you why. What she told the royal family, what she told Harry, wouldn't have jived, wouldn't have been consistent with...
Things just got a whole load worse for Meghan Markle because her sister Samantha ain't going anywhere.
What if the royal fairy tale we've all been told was nothing more than smoke and mirrors?
The fact is, Harry and Meghan lied. Buckingham Palace lied on their behalf.
What if the image of Meghan Markle, the glowing mother, the modern duchess, the rebel who rewrote tradition, wasn't just exaggerated, but engineered from the ground up? For years, Meghan has framed herself as an outsider who conquered the rigid rules of royalty. But now, shocking claims from her half-sister Samantha Markle and even more explosive allegations from a mystery woman named DL are threatening to tear that image apart. And this isn't just petty family drama. These revelations could rattle the very foundation of the monarchy. But here's the part that will leave you stunned. Meghan's story has always been one of reinvention. She told the world she grew up as an only child, longing for siblings she never had. Yet Samantha Markle, her half-sister, immediately called that out as false. To Samantha, Meghan deliberately erased her family to make her outsider story more convincing. It wasn't just about polishing an image, it was about building a new identity from scratch. And that's where suspicion began. Was Meghan simply acting like any celebrity protecting her brand? Or was she writing an entirely new backstory so convincing it fooled the world? But here's the crazier part. Samantha wasn't finished. She was just getting started.
And I thought, what is she not contextually aware? She's trying to hide something. This is really sloppy.
Samantha Markle didn't come forward with soft words or cautious statements. She came swinging. In her eyes, Meghan wasn't a misunderstood duchess or a victim of the media. She was an architect of deception, carefully building a narrative that erased anyone who didn't fit the image she wanted the world to see. One of Samantha's harshest accusations centered on their father, Thomas Markle. While Meghan often spoke of him as if he had abandoned her or was tragically lost from her life, Samantha painted a very different picture. She claimed Meghan hadn't lost him at all. She had deliberately iced him out. To Samantha, this wasn't just emotional distance. It was a cold, calculated decision to cut ties with their father the moment his presence no longer fit the glossy royal storyline.
In my opinion, she would still be a waitress if it wasn't for Dad.
But Samantha didn't stop there. She accused Meghan of doing the same thing to the rest of the family, erasing them like inconvenient footnotes. Every time Meghan told the world she had grown up as an only child, Samantha said she was struck by the sheer boldness of the lie. After all, she and their brother were living proof that Meghan wasn't alone. Yet the Duchess had painted herself as if she had no siblings at all. To Samantha, these weren't harmless omissions. They were deliberate rewrites of history, designed to tug at heartstrings and fit the underdog narrative Meghan wanted the public and the royals to believe. And then came the bombshell. Samantha turned her attention to Meghan's pregnancies. To her, this wasn't just another example of narrative manipulation. This was the centerpiece, the crown jewel of the entire deception. In one of Deception, the So Intaken, she suggested that Meghan's glowing bump photos, her carefully chosen maternity outfits, and her emotional speeches about motherhood weren't just misleading, they were performances. Staged not only for Prince Harry, but for the entire royal family and the watching world. It was an accusation that cut deeper than any other. Because if true, it meant Meghan wasn't just rewriting her past, she was rewriting her present, the most intimate and celebrated part of her life. Motherhood, Samantha implied, had been transformed into a script, another act in the play of becoming a duchess. Of course, critics immediately asked whether Samantha's words came from bitterness. Was this just a jealous half-sister trying to cash in on her siblings' fame? Or was she a whistleblower, the only one bold enough to expose what others whispered about behind closed doors? The truth may lie somewhere in the middle. Samantha's relationship with Meghan has always been fractured, filled with long silences and bitter feuds. But the sharpness of her accusations made them hard to dismiss as mere jealousy. She wasn't just claiming Meghan was distant or difficult, she was accusing her of deception on a global scale. And the timing couldn't have been more brutal. Meghan and Harry had just begun establishing their brand outside the royal family, shaping themselves as global icons of authenticity, resilience, and living your truth. To have Samantha accuse Meghan of living a lie, of cutting out her family, of staging pregnancies, was more than personal drama. It was a direct strike at the very foundation of their brand. It left the world divided. Some saw Samantha as vindictive, a sister jealous of Meghan's fame and fortune. But others began to wonder, if Meghan could erase siblings, distance herself from her father, and rewrite her past, what else might she be hiding? And just when you think it couldn't get any wilder, someone else stepped into the spotlight with a story that shook everything.
I grew up as an only child, which everyone who grew up around me knows.
Just when it seemed like Samantha's accusations couldn't get any heavier, the scandal took a sharp and unexpected turn. Out of the shadows came a woman known only as DL. She wasn't a tabloid writer, she wasn't a YouTube commentator, and she wasn't a bitter ex-friend. She was someone claiming to have lived inside the very very secret that Meghan had been accused of hiding. DL arrived with more than whispers. She came armed with documents, hospital bills, medical notes, and the suggestion of ironclad non-disclosure agreements that had kept her silent for years. This wasn't just gossip floating around on social media. This was a woman placing herself at the very center of the most controversial chapter in Meghan's story, her pregnancies. According to DL, she was the real surrogate behind Archie and Lilibet. While the world saw Meghan glowing in designer dresses, gently cradling her baby bump as cameras flashed, DL said she was the one carrying the royal heirs in isolation. To her, Meghan's radiant strolls through the spotlight weren't proof of motherhood, they were performances staged for the public. She described being promised privacy, protection, and financial stability. Yet, instead of security, she claimed she was left with betrayal, loneliness, and a silence so crushing it erased her from her own story. While Meghan's speeches celebrated women's empowerment, DL said she was hidden away, forced to carry the burden alone, silenced by contracts she couldn't break. The contrast was devastating. On one side of the curtain, the Duchess of Sussex appeared to the world as a symbol of resilience, proudly speaking about motherhood and the power of rewriting traditions. On the other side, DL painted a darker picture, a woman used as a vessel, cut out of the narrative, watching her role in history vanish the moment the cameras turned on Meghan. And here's what made her story so dangerous. It wasn't vague. It wasn't a collection of half-baked rumors stitched together for clicks. DL spoke with specifics. She described recruitment meetings in California. She spoke of agreements drafted in quiet backrooms, months of medical supervision hidden away from the public, and the suffocating weight of secrecy that came with carrying children who would be born into the royal line. It was too detailed to brush off as internet chatter. The loneliness of long nights, the fear of breaking the contract, the sense that she was locked in a royal vault where even her pain wasn't acknowledged. These weren't the words of someone spinning fan fiction. They sounded like testimony, and that's why her story struck like lightning. Because if DL was telling the truth, then Meghan hadn't just staged a performance for the cameras, she had turned motherhood into the ultimate illusion. A costume so convincing that it fooled not just Harry, not just the palace, but millions of people around the world who believed they were witnessing royal history in the making. But here's the shocking twist. DL's story wasn't vague gossip. It came with details that were impossible to ignore, and the deeper she went, the harder it became for the public to dismiss her words as conspiracy.
She's absolutely ruthless. There's nothing original here.
DL didn't just hint at a secret. She laid it out piece by piece with a clarity that made it impossible to dismiss. She spoke of recruitment meetings in California, moments that sounded more like negotiations for a contract role than the start of a sacred journey into motherhood. According to her, these meetings weren't filled with joy or anticipation. They were cold, transactional, and tightly controlled. The kind of discussions where every word was documented, every promise etched into paperwork that left no room for questions. She described contracts signed behind closed doors, documents so strict they made her feel less like a human being and more like an asset. The secrecy, she claimed, wasn't about protection, it was about control. Every line reminded her of what she couldn't say, what she couldn't show, and above all, who she could never become in the story that was about to unfold. Months of isolation followed. DL painted the picture of a woman hidden away while the spotlight shone somewhere else. While Meghan walked in front of cameras, glowing in luxury gowns and cradling her baby bump, DL said she spent nights in silence, her body carrying the heirs to the throne, but her name erased from history before it could even appear. And then came the part that made her testimony hit even harder: postpartum complications. She claimed the end of her journey wasn't celebrated with the joy of new life, but marked by pain, medical struggles, and the crushing reality of bills piling up. Bills, she said, were hers to shoulder, even though she had carried children who would be raised in palaces and mansions. It was the cruelest contrast imaginable. On one side, Meghan's perfectly staged photographs, beaming with pride as she rested her hands on a bump that DL alleged was nothing more than a prop. On the other side, a woman left with scars, both physical and emotional, was wondering if the sacrifice she made would ever be acknowledged. This wasn't internet gossip. This wasn't fan fiction cooked up in an online forum. This was a woman saying, "I lived it, I was there, and I have the proof." And the public couldn't look away. For every detail DL revealed, Meghan's carefully polished authenticity began to crack. The speeches about empowerment suddenly rang hollow. The glamorous baby bump photos looked staged. The timeline of events that once felt inspiring now seemed like part of a carefully written script. Her words were too specific, too grounded to simply laugh off. And that led to the one question no one could ignore. If DL was lying, why didn't Meghan or Harry crush the story instantly? Because if there was nothing to hide, it would have been the easiest scandal in the world to shut down. A statement, a single denial, even a DNA test could have ended the speculation in seconds. But that's where things got even stranger. With Accusations this explosive, one might expect Meghan and Harry to come out swinging with proof that would put the rumors to bed once and for all. A single denial, a straightforward press statement, or better yet, a simple DNA test could have silenced the speculation in seconds. It would have been the easiest scandal to bury. Clear evidence, delivered quickly, could have left critics scrambling with nothing to hold on to. But that didn't happen. Instead, there was nothing. No denial, no evidence, just silence. And in the court of public opinion, silence doesn't protect you. It doesn't look like dignity or restraint. In fact, silence can be louder than words. It screams suspicion. People began to ask, if there's nothing to hide, then why not prove it? That question grew even sharper when royal tradition was brought into the spotlight. The monarchy has always demanded transparency, especially when it comes to royal births. It's not just a formality, it's a centuries-old ritual designed to prevent exactly these kinds of questions. Diana followed it, stepping onto the hospital steps with newborn William and Harry in her arms, tired but smiling, proving beyond doubt that the children were hers. Kate Middleton did the same with all three of her children, upholding the ritual and showing the world that everything was exactly as it seemed. Meghan, she broke the script entirely. No hospital steps, no clear announcement of where the births had taken place, no physician's confirmation. Instead, there was confusion, secrecy, and carefully staged photographs released only when the Sussexes decided the timing was right. For critics, this wasn't an act of privacy, it was a glaring red flag. Every deviation from tradition added fuel to the fire. Every unanswered question became another piece of evidence in the eyes of those who already doubted her story. What Meghan framed as protecting her children was reframed by skeptics as evasion, and that silence carried weight. Because in the world of monarchy, silence doesn't exist in a vacuum. When whispers are ignored, they don't fade, they grow louder. Small rumors turn into dominant narratives, and soon enough, what began as scattered gossip online snowballed into something far more dangerous, a full-blown constitutional crisis. Because when you strip away the glamour, the PR, and the interviews, one brutal question remained. If Meghan broke with every royal tradition, what else did she break? Royal succession depends on proof of lineage. If surrogacy happened without disclosure, critics argue it could destabilize the crown's legitimacy itself. This wasn't just about Meghan's image anymore. It was about centuries of tradition and whether two innocent children were caught in the middle of a secret never meant to see daylight. And when the palace expected Meghan to clear her name, she and Harry made a choice that stunned everyone. Instead of evidence, Meghan and Harry unleashed their lawyers. Media outlets received threats, but not once did the Sussexes deny DL's story outright. To the public, that silence looked less like confidence and more like fear. Experts ripped their strategy apart, saying legal intimidation only made the story sound more believable. And the longer they stayed silent, the more their empire began to collapse from within. Polls flipped. More people believed DL's account than Meghan's polished narrative. Netflix deals, Oprah interviews, and speeches about truth were replayed with suspicion. Insiders whispered that Harry and Meghan were no longer acting like a couple, but like business partners fighting to hold their brand together. Meanwhile, Samantha twisted the knife, calling it not revenge but revelation, the collapse of an empire built on illusion. And here's the harsh reality until Meghan speaks, that silence will echo louder than anything she's ever said. So here we are. Samantha's accusations, DL's shocking surrogate claims, and Meghan and Harry's silence have combined into one of the biggest royal scandals of the decade. The fairy tale Meghan tried to write is no longer hers to control. Every unanswered question fuels suspicion. Every legal threat without denial makes the silence heavier. And every day that passes chips away at the Sussex brand. But here's the kicker. This isn't the first time Meghan's carefully crafted story has started to crumble. If you thought these revelations were shocking, wait until you hear the secret Tom Bower uncovered that left Meghan furious. On our next video, we will expose it all. This is Gossip Slice, where we shine the light where others won't. And trust me, the next one is even juicier.